Gravity Falls, a show of humor, mystery, and casual viewing. Unless you're me. My name is Christian. You're probably wondering why I'm dressed as Tipper Pines and about to rewatch the entire series. Rest assured, there's a perfectly logical explanation.
Right now, move on to Golf War, and this is pretty much sort of like a one-and-done episode. The writers were saying that they wanted to have somewhat more of a lighter episode after the first couple episodes, since they were kind of like really dark and intense. So I totally understand why they kind of want to have like more of like a lighter, not as plot-driven episode. And with the premise of this episode is that kind of continues the rivalry between Pacifica and Mabel, and Mabel's always feeling bad after, Pacifica's always like making fun of her, and Dipper is trying to make Mabel feel better. And one of the things that Mabel loves is mini golf, so they go to a miniature golf course, and Mabel's about to get the high score, but then she loses at the last second, and then of course Pacifica comes in and makes fun of her for it. So then Mabel challenges Pacifica to kind of like a midnight golf course competition. So then they leave and they come back at midnight and have their little golf competition. But then as Mabel's practicing, she realizes that the golf course is actually controlled by these little creatures called little Putchians, which are like these little golf ball like characters who like control all the little obstacles and everything like that. So she kind of bribes them in a way to help her win the competition, because if they help her win, then she'll give them like a sticker or something, and then they'll be all happy and whatnot. So it's kind of like a lesson of like, don't use people, and then, try to see people who they really are. So then, as the episode goes on, little Putchians eventually figure out that Mabel lied to them, and they decide to, still continue with their plan of like getting rid of Pacifica. And then after they get rid of Pacifica, they get rid of, Mabel and everything. So then, they kind of tie Pacifica up to like one of the courses, and like there's like a windmill that's about to like chop her in half and everything like that. But then, Mabel tries to get over her rivalry with Pacifica and like save her. They escape from the little Putchians, and everything's all resolved in the end. And yeah, we get a little scene at the end where the Pines drive Pacifica home, and we get to see the outside of Northwest Manor, and Northwest Manor will definitely become like a big part of a future episode. So it's kind of cool that we're kind of seeing that hint in this one. And then we also get some references that Dipper says about her family's being frauds and everything like that, kind of like a reference to Rational Treasure. And then we get another kind of like dream sequence with Kraz and Zyler, when Mabel's fantasizing about kind of getting back at Pacifica and like insulting her, and then Kraz and Zyler coming in and said like, we got a call for someone who has severe burns. So yeah, it's kind of cool seeing those guys again, and we'll definitely see more of them later on in the series. So yeah, kind of like what I was saying with the last episode, Alex Hirsch was just trying to kind of wrap up a lot of like different plot elements that were said in the last season, like rivalries and stuff like that, and his whole thing of wanting to create more depth for these characters. So a lot of like kind of like the one-dimensional characters like Pacifica wants to give a little bit more depth to her, show a little bit more of like her home life and like who she is. And we'll definitely get more Pacifica as the series goes on, but he definitely wanted to kind of like resolve the whole rivalry between her and Mabel, and then resolve the rivalry between her and Dipper in a future episode, just because she's going to become important later on. So even though it's kind of like a one and done episode, definitely has some like important character moments in it, and a lot of like light and fun, happy moments, except for that one scene with Big Henry, supposedly dying, on screen. We also get a couple of cryptograms during the end credits of the episode. There's a cryptogram in the Key Visionaire cipher, and there's a keyword whatevs. Found on the castle wall right as the golf cart drives past the giant swinging axes, which translates to remember Big Henry. Also on the page section revealed at the end of the episode, there are two sequences of numbers, and after being put through all the ciphers, which translates to the old man sleeping on the green can't help but wonder what he's seen, which is a reference to Old Man McGucket sleeping on the golf course. But yeah, like I said, like good fun, one and done episode, good character moments, and a lot of things that kind of like hint at what's to come with the future of the series.